I spent 15 years in youth ministry, and I've been a part of some really incredible things. I've also been a part of some really massive mistakes, many of which were my fault. So in this video, we're gonna be specifically breaking down some of the things that I learned after 15 years of youth ministry. And we're specifically gonna be talking about some things that work and some things that don't work as we break down how to grow your youth ministry coming up. Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Chris Abbott, but all my friends just call me Abbo. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Super excited to have you guys here. This is where we talk about everything church growth, social media, technology. I love talking about youth ministry because I'm super passionate about youth ministry. I was in it for 15 years. I've been a worship leader for 19 years, and I've been helping pastors with church growth and social media for the last 7 years. So one of the things I wanted to do, and one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, because as I said before, I have been a part of a lot of great things, right? I've done some things well, I've done some things completely wrong, right? And so if I can help you shortcut some of those things in your youth ministry, then it's all been worth it. So let's dive in. Okay, so the most important thing that I will say in this entire video is that youth ministry basically comes down to one thing, and that's relationship. 85% of youth ministry is simply showing up. It's funny how consistency can be the number one thing that'll actually grow a youth group. Because if you think about it, right, everything in this world is about inconsistency. So many teenagers have inconsistency in their relationships, in their friendships, in their home life. Imagine what these different high schoolers and middle schoolers have had to go through throughout COVID. Right, some of them who missed their senior year or didn't get a senior prom or missed out on their senior trip, or some of them that all of a sudden missed out on their 7th grade year, right, or their 10th grade year, or couldn't go get their license when they turned 16 because of a global pandemic, right? Who saw that coming? So this is one of the reasons that with all of the inconsistency going around, us being a constant and being consistent in these youth kids' lives is one of the most important things that you can do. So relationship is always going to be the number one thing that's going to grow your youth group. If you're building relationships with these youth kids, that's going to trump everything in their life. And for a lot of them, you are going to be the only constant in their life. All right, so one of the things that we used to do in my youth group in order to grow was we started having parties on Friday night. All right, now we actually did this kind of accidentally. This wasn't planned. It wasn't like we sat down and said, okay, let's start having Friday night parties and we'll just pack hundreds of kids into a house and that's a great idea. What we did is it just kind of started slow. We literally started having some youth kids over to play Halo, right? Now this is years ago. Halo was huge. Everyone loved it. And so they would come over and we'd start playing Halo, right? And then they would invite a couple of more friends, and then some of those guys would invite their girlfriends. And so we had some of the girl youth leaders were over there talking to the girlfriends. All the guys were sitting around playing Halo, and next thing you know, someone broke out a guitar, and then we started playing foosball. And we literally just kept having these parties every single Friday night for about 2 years. Now, this is crazy because, again, this kind of grew organically. It didn't start this way. But I would say for the last 6 months of those, we were running between 100 and 200 kids in one house every single Friday night. I know that sounds insane, but that's not an exaggeration. Literally, it would take 5 minutes for you to walk down the hallway to the bathroom, right? One, because there'd be a long line for it, and two, because there was just so many people jam-packed into this house. We even decided to have a concert in the backyard one time, but there wasn't enough room. So we actually had a concert on the roof, which was pretty crazy. The cops came because some neighbors 2 streets over called the cops because the music was so loud, and they found a band on the roof playing, right? It was an interesting time. But the bottom line was, man, we were building relationships with every single one of those kids that came out, right? So we had a pretty large youth group at the time. We had a ton of youth leaders, and all of them would just show up on Friday night, and we would just talk to people, we'd have conversations, and we'd get to know youth kids. And it became a much easier way for kids to bring their friends to a party than it was for them to bring to church. That was a pretty special time in youth ministry, pretty crazy, but also pretty incredible. And again, all of it came down to relationship. Right? Who doesn't want to go to a party and then kids would be shocked when they showed up and found all these people and nobody was drinking? Pretty awesome way to build relationship and get to know kids, and then a very easy way to get them to take the next step, which is to come to church after they've been hanging out on Friday night a couple of times. All right, another great way to reach new kids and grow your youth ministry is by doing dude nights. Obviously, if you're a girl, you should be having girl nights. If you're a dude, you should be having dude nights. But this was something that when I was a youth pastor, I would literally just invite dudes to do things that they liked, things that I liked. Right? So we would have dude nights and and sometimes we'd have them at the church where we do 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, or we'd play jungle pong, or we would play ultimate frisbee, right? Sometimes I would have them over to my house, and my wife would go stay over to a friend's house, and we'd stay up all night long playing Call of Duty or Monopoly or all different types of games, right? We go running like crazy out in the snow. We drink IBC root beer and just have a blast. Right? So a lot of times, again, because everything comes back to relationship, right? We didn't need to have a Devo every single time and break open the Bible and talk about whether or not they were living for God or whether they were sleeping with their girlfriends, right? A lot of times just building that relationship, right? Then it opened the door for that kind of stuff. I remember having one of the quote unquote popular kids from the local high school who was a starter on the football team, who, because we'd been going through dude nights and because he had been a part of all these different things that we'd been doing to just build relationship, came to me one time almost crying, basically just confessing, man, I haven't been living for God. I've been sleeping with my girlfriend, right? Here are all the different things I'm doing wrong, right? And I just said, well, what do you think you need to do? He goes, man, I think I need to break up with her. I think I need to live for God. And I think I need to get my life right with Jesus. I'm like, I agree, right? We prayed and he went home and he did that. Broke up with his girlfriend who was a cheerleader, at the time, and he was one of the starting football players, right? But that didn't come because we were just out there preaching all the time. It came because we were building relationship, and then the ministry came as the natural overflow of that relationship. So before I get to my last couple of points, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We come out with brand new videos every single day, 5 days a week. And if you hit that little bell notification, you'll get notified every single time we drop a new video. All right, now I told you, we've done some things right, but we've also done some things wrong. I'll tell you, one of the dumbest things I ever did in youth ministry is I actually shot a kid in the face with a bottle rocket. Like, he was almost blind because I was an idiot. We were out at camp, we were having a good time, and we were playing this game where kids would dress up in like all black or camo, and they'd have to sneak around to these different stations. And right. And so one of the things that I did, for whatever reason, I guess because as we've established, I was an idiot, I brought a bunch of bottle rockets, and I was literally just shooting off bottle rockets all over the place as they went through the woods, just to kind of scare kids and disorient them as they were trying to creep through. And so we had this outdoor pavilion, and one of the kids comes up and he made a bunch of noise up at the front of the sanctuary. Right? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna freak this kid out, but I don't wanna shoot him with a bottle rocket. So what I'll do is I will put the bottle rocket on the ground so it'll shoot along the floor, and I'll shoot it at the back of the sanctuary since it sounds like he's up at the front of the sanctuary, right? All the lights are out, it's dark, it's in the middle of the woods. So the problem with that is he made a bunch of noise at the front of the sanctuary, then snuck to the back and got down on his stomach and started army crawling across so that he could sneak up on us, right? So what happens when you are army crawling on your face and somebody puts a bottle rocket on the ground? That's right. Boom. So I don't know what the chances are of that, but the bottle rocket shot across the floor all the way to the back of the sanctuary, hit him right below his right eye, and exploded, and he couldn't see anything for like an hour. He was literally blind out of one eye. I shot him in the face with a bottle rocket, right? Who does that? That was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in youth ministry. Luckily, one of the youth leaders there was a registered nurse. She kept her cool and just explained, hey, don't worry, you're actually fine. This is scary, but your vision will return. It's just a big flash of light. You're not blind. You're totally okay. You had to talk me off the ledge because I literally was freaking out. That's youth ministry. I'm sure every single person that's been in youth ministry has done something dumb. Maybe not that dumb. Maybe you've never shot somebody in the face with an explosive, right? But we've all made mistakes, so it's important to learn from them. Needless to say, I never shot off fireworks around youth kids ever again, and we didn't do anything quite that crazy for a really, really long time. All right, so I could go on and on and on in this video because I love talking about this stuff, and I've got a million stories. But one of the things that I want to share with you here is actually how my brother-in-law built one of the largest middle school ministries in the entire nation in just a few short years, right? So he was tasked with launching a middle school ministry at our church. Now, at the time, we just had one big youth ministry, and it went from 7th to 12th grade. So what they decided to do is split off high school. And if you guys have ever tried to do middle school ministry, then you already know that all the youth leaders wanted to stay with the high school kids, and basically nobody wanted to go hang out with the middle school kids. So he had to start a ministry completely from scratch, and he had to go recruit youth leaders from scratch. So what he did was he started with the youth leaders. Instead of trying to build a youth group, he started building a youth leader team. So he would go up to people and he would start casting vision, right? Instead of just cornering people at the church and saying, hey, John, man, do you want to come be a middle school youth ministry leader? It's going to be awesome, bro, right? People see right through that. Not a whole lot of people get excited about that, right? Instead, what he did is just say, hey, John, Man, I don't know if you heard or not, but we're actually launching a brand new middle school ministry. I tell you, I have a huge heart for these middle school kids because I realized, man, it was middle school the first time that somebody offered me drugs. Right? It was actually in middle school the very first time that I got exposed to pornography. It was in middle school the very first time that I found out that some of my friends were having sex with their girlfriends. Right? It was in middle school the very first time that I went to a party and there was alcohol and somebody offered me liquor for the first time. It was in middle school the very first time that I had a chance to smoke weed. Right? And just said, man, I think the problem is by the time most kids get to high school and college, it's already too late. They've already tried those things. But I think we can reach them before that ever happens. I think we can reach them in middle school. And if we can get a hold of them and introduce them to Jesus, we can change their life for the rest of their life. Right? Man, would you be willing to pray about being a middle school leader with me? That's a totally different conversation. So when you do that and you start with the why and you start with vision, right? People buy into that vision. And that's exactly what happened. So he opened up the middle school ministry building every single Friday night. And instead of inviting middle school kids, he just started inviting his leaders, right? And it started off with only like 4 leaders, right? And they either play dodgeball or they just eat some pizza and hang out and talk about life, right? And then the next week it might be 3 youth leaders. The next week was 4. The next week was 5, then back to 3. But what happened was he just continued to stay consistent, to keep talking to people, sharing the vision, asking people to pray about being a middle school leader and kind of sharing his why. And those Friday nights just begin to grow, right? Then it was 6 people, then it was 10 people, then 15, then 20 leaders, then 30 leaders, then 40 leaders. Before you know it, he built this massive youth leader team who was incredibly loyal to him, and they bought into the vision of reaching these middle school kids before they ever got to high school, before the enemy had a chance to get them hooked on drugs and pornography and sex and all these other different things. And so because of that, that youth ministry went from 0 to 500 in about 3 years. Crazy. A middle school ministry. Like, you think about it, when you have 500 middle school kids who show up, they need 500 rides from parents who drive, right? Like, it was the line for pickup went all the way down the street, right? And then down another street. It was absolutely crazy. It got to the point within about 5 years where we were running 600, 700 middle school kids every single Wednesday night, right? And this is 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And it was crazy because I used to lead worship for him at the time. I was one of his youth leaders. And I'm telling you, it was like an ocean of kids out there, middle school kids, and they're just out there and they would start, we'd get done with the worship set and they'd start chanting, one more song, right? And it's like, what? This is church. And we got kids chanting one more song, right? We'd go back into it and have an absolute blast. But I'm telling you, all of that happened. A lot of people probably came in and looked at it and said, oh yeah, well, if my church had all these youth leaders and, and this big, huge building and had someone, as charismatic, that middle school pastor, right, then I could build a huge ministry as well, right? What they didn't know is that my brother-in-law was pouring into those leaders for years, that he was using his own money to buy a bunch of soda and pizzas to feed them every single Friday night. And he was giving up his Friday night for years, right? So oftentimes we don't realize the price that people paid to build the thing they built. So if you're looking to build a youth ministry or grow your youth ministry, this is one of the things I recommend, is go all in on relationship with young people and start building relationship with your youth leaders. If you go all in on your youth leader team and you pour into them, then you can raise them up as leaders and then they can pour into the kids and you can grow really, really fast. All right, so if you like this video and you want to learn more about youth ministry, about how to reach people for Jesus, about social media, man, I want to invite you into the Church Marketers Facebook group. So I'm an admin in there along with Ryan Wakefield from Church Marketing University and the rest of the CMU team, as well as a ton of pastors and church leaders, and we're all having this ongoing conversation about how we can reach more people for Jesus. So you can simply go to Facebook and type in Church Marketers and join the group, or you can click on the link in the description below. But either way, let's keep the conversation going. We'll see you in the Church Marketers Facebook group.